Man, nice job. Because joining us here in the studio, the president of Empower Mississippi, Grant Callen. How you doing today, Grant?
I am great. Glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you here. Glad to see you. I haven't talked to you in a while.
It's been a while.
But that's okay. That just means we have a lot to catch up on.
We do.
And we have the pleasure of discussing a Supreme Court ruling, but not the one we've been talking about continuously since Friday. This is a different one, and the big one is kind of overshadowing some of the other important rulings that have come out of this court. You and I were talking. This has been a very impactful session.
It's hard to keep up. There is some significant rulings coming down.
Yeah.
And, the one we want to talk about is Carson v. Makin, and this came down about 10 days ago. And as you know, school choice has been rolling around the country. It's growing in popularity, particularly since COVID. But it's been growing year after year after year. More parents rising up saying, we need education options. One of the barriers to school choice is this idea that children shouldn't be able to use public money to go to a religious school. And I think this is a affront to our Constitution and the free exercise of religion, and it turns out the Supreme Court agrees. So there was a case from some families in Maine, and Maine has long had a great school choice program, in effect because they don't have public schools in every neighborhood. And so they've said, hey, if you live in a community where we don't have a public school, we're going to give you a voucher and let you shop around and find a private school that you can use these public tuition dollars at. However, you can go anywhere you want to go, but not a school, a Christian school, a Catholic school, a school that supports faith. And a family in Maine recently filed a lawsuit that's worked its way to the Supreme Court and said this is this is discriminating against our education options if the compelling interest in the state is that a family gets an education, a child gets an education. You shouldn't be able to stop that child from using those funds at a religious school if that is secondary to them trying to get an education. And the Supreme Court agreed with the parents, overruled the lower court, and said you can go to any school you want to go, even if it's a religious school.
And the way I understand the ruling, the Supreme Court basically said that, especially in this particular situation, you don't have an option. You're giving the parents tuition money to send their kids to school, and at that point, the government is out of it. The money is in the parents' hands. They can spend it wherever they want to spend it. Right?
That's right. And that's where the court has ruled that in Mississippi before and other places, but it's never been this clear from a federal Supreme Court ruling that, yes, this is not the state trying to subsidize Christian religion or Christianity. This is the state saying, we've made a decision that it's the interest of the state to make sure every child gets a quality education. And if they happen to get a quality education at a Christian school, the money is flowing to parents. Parents are the ones directing where it gets to go. So you're absolutely right. It's fundamentally about the free exercise of religion and about the fact that money is following the child. It's not about trying to subsidize religion.
And it's about parent choice, I think. This is a big statement on parent choice. And to me, it's also a big statement from the Supreme Court telling the federal government to get the heck out of what parents decide their kids should and shouldn't be taught, where they should and shouldn't be educated.
It sure is. And I think the ramifications of this are really a lot bigger than just Maine. For the families in Maine, this is a big deal. But this also will have ramifications across the country because there are over half the states have what has come to be known as a Blaine Amendment. And the Blaine Amendments came about in the early 19th century, and it was a Catholic bigotry, a Catholic discrimination where Protestants were concerned about the growth of immigrants, Catholic immigrants, and they were seeing Catholic schools on the rise, and they did not want any public money ever to find its hands in the Catholic school. And there's no doubt, there's no argument. It was a bigotry against Catholicism, and so they tried a federal amendment that failed, but they were successful in getting Blaine amendments in something like 30-something states in different forms. And they basically say public money can't go to a private school that is not non-sectarian. So if it's has a faith emphasis at all, public money can't go to it. Now, in a lot of states, courts have already ruled, well, there's a difference between money going directly to the school and going to families. In Mississippi, that's the case. So it really hasn't been a barrier here. But this just eliminates all doubt and says across the country, school choice programs should allow students to go to whatever school will meet their needs. And if that's a faith school, great. They're going to get a great education. The compelling state interest is about the education, not subsidizing religion.
And
so
in this case, it's the parent's choice.
It's the parent's choice.
Because the federal government isn't writing a check to the school. They're writing a check to the parent, and then the parent is writing a check to the school. There's a middleman there, if you will, and it's an all-important middleman when it comes to who is making the choices for the children, at least to me.
And look, a lot of people think, well, school choice is really just about trying to privatize the system and get private schools funded with public money. And I'd say absolutely not. If you did that, you would end up with a similarly dysfunctional system as a traditional public system. That is part of the problem, is we've taken out parents and students as the primary customers of education. So the way to fix that is not to just publicly fund private schools. That's not necessarily going to do any better. The way to fix it is to fund students and let the money follow the child. Give parents who know their kids the best all the tools in the world to make sure they can match their kids with the best school, whether that's a public school or a private school or a charter school or magnet school. And, in Mississippi, we have a whole lot more public schools than private schools. So a lot of times when we're talking about school choice in Mississippi, part of the fight is just even within the public system to allow parents the option of shopping around to find the best setting for their kid. And it's on the move. It's on the move here and across the country. And there's been some huge wins in other states that are going to give parents more choice.
I want to keep talking about this and find out where we're at and what kind of effect you think this ruling will have moving forward in the state of Mississippi when it comes to school choice. What the effects are that we will see. Don't forget, Mr. Blaine would like to remind you, don't trust those Catholics. That was basically the impetus of that amendment.
That's it.
So, yeah.
Don't trust the Catholics.
Sometimes we forget where some of these things start, don't we?
You're right. And the left does not want to talk about the origin story for these Blaine amendments.
Oh, no. That was last week. Come on. We got to move forward, right? We've got Grant Callen with us from Empower Mississippi, and we'll continue the conversation with him on the Gallo this morning. And sitting across from me, the president of Empower Mississippi, Grant Callen. We're talking about the Supreme Court judgment in the case from Maine that really opens up school choice. And my question to you, Grant, because I know you keep up with this is your wheelhouse. This is your stuff. What, if any, visible effect is this going to have in Mississippi moving forward when it comes to school choice?
I'm not sure that the impact here is going to be as great as other places, honestly, because I don't think our Blaine Amendment has been a barrier. Now, I'll tell you, and you probably remember some of this, when Mississippi was working on our special needs education scholarship account building towards 2015 when it finally passed, the opponents of that program constantly said this is going to be unconstitutional because of our Blaine Amendment. And it wasn't, but it had an effect on the debate, and it makes legislators don't want to have a bill they worked on thrown out as unconstitutional. So it's more that this is it's a weapon it's used by people who don't support school choice to say you can't do this, and it's mostly been without grounds. But this just removes all doubt, and it takes the weapon away. And I really do think in other places there are much stronger Blaine amendments that are harder to work with. And so this just clears the field from all of that. And you can just see the momentum building for parents to have the freedom to select the school that their children go to and shop around and match their kid with the right setting. Year before last, West Virginia passed the largest school choice program in the nation that was going to allow virtually every kid in the state a scholarship fund that would let them shop around. And just this past week, Arizona passed a similar program that's actually a little bit larger that will allow 1.1 million kids in Arizona a fund of about $6,500, and they have the freedom to shop around and find the right setting. And this is on the heels of Arizona already has one of the largest charter school sectors in the state, which is a different form of choice. So it's really not about the type of choice program. It's about throwing every option out there at parents, letting parents find the best setting for their kids.
Now, what do you say? Another one of the criticisms that come out, and I want to get back to charter schools in a second because it was on my list, and you jumped out in front of me, Grant. But one of the big arguments that people make against school choice is, well, if you let everybody go where they want to go, some schools are just going to wither away to nothing. We can't have that. What's your response to that criticism of this idea?
Yeah, so I think that's a system argument rather than focused on students. And when you focus on students, which is really our obligation, is to make sure individual students get what they need. That's about empowering them to make the best decision for their family and for parents to make the best decision for their kids. But I will also say, in states that have done this, that have really expanded choice, what has happened is the whole system has risen. And, you know, we draw the comparison a lot of times to Florida because 20 years ago, Florida was right where Mississippi has been at times, bottom of the pack, really struggling with our education system statewide. And a number of leaders came in about 20 years ago and said, we're going to give parents every option we can. They expanded vouchers and tax credit scholarships and charter schools and magnet homeschooling, all kinds of stuff. Today, in Florida, 48% of the kids in the state are attending a school that's not the one they're zoned for. So that they're not all in private school. They're not all homeschooling. The vast majority of those are still in public school, but it's not the one they're zoned for. So they're shopping around. So nearly 1 in 2 kids are choosing something different than the school they're assigned to. The end result has been Florida is now in the top 10 states nationally for all students and their student progress. So it has been a force for raising standards, raising expectations, and helping all students get a better education, not just the ones who are choosing something different. And that's what I think would happen here if we expanded it beyond what we have.
You know, what you're talking about is something that's kind of a pet rant of mine that I go on every so often. I think a lot of our problems, and this is a great example of it, what you were saying just a second ago, a lot of our problems come from the fact that we have become process-focused instead of results-focused. We know, used to be in America, I want to accomplish this, and you figured out how to get there. Now it seems that we spend more time worrying about making sure we get there the right way and touch second base and do all the things properly, and then whatever result we get, we'll deal with when we get there. That leads to different results. When you're focused on the process before the result, the finish line should be the goal from the beginning. And it's not for a lot of people and a lot of organizations right now. It feels like to me anyway.
It's not. And I think with education, I mean, there's no better example of this than education, where we've just taken our eye off the ball. And the ball is, how do we prepare kids for life? And one way to measure that progress is testing. But the goal is not creating kids who are good at taking tests. And that's even the challenge we see in our public school system across the state, is we have so emphasized that we want kids to be great at tests that we're really frustrating our kids. We're frustrating our families. Teachers are more frustrated than I've seen in a long, long time. And it's not that tests aren't good. Kids need to take tests. It's one way we measure progress, but it's not the only way. And so it's things like that. And that's just one example in education where we've let the system or the way we measure the system or the process be a hurdle to helping kids be prepared for life.
We let the process dictate what we do and what results we're going for based on what process we think we should use, instead of picking the process that will best achieve the result we want to get to. That's, to me, the root problem in a lot of areas, not just education, that we're dealing with right now.
Well, and that's one of the reasons I'm constantly talking about choice, because I think it's one of the features that helps align incentives. And the truth is, I don't know for your child or another person's child, I don't know the school that will best meet their needs. But you do, and they do. And we've got to get back to a place where we're letting the people closest to the problem make decisions. And for an education, that means parents ought to be making the vast majority of the decisions, and teachers second to that, because they're the closest to the students. And unfortunately, very often, most of the most important decisions about a child's education are made in Washington or Jackson or the Department of Ed or even the school district, instead of in the classroom, around the kitchen table, with the people who know that kid best. And so to do that, you got to flip the system on its head and make sure the people that are the closest actually have the tools to make the decision.
Let's loop back around for a second. Charter schools, where are we at in the state in regards to that? Because as you mentioned earlier, that is one type of school choice for parents.
It is, and it's a great type. So we are, 9 years after the law passed in 2013. We have 7 charters that are up and running that they've just been life-changing for kids. They're all in high-poverty communities. They are overwhelmingly serving Mississippi's African-American students, and they are doing it extraordinarily well in giving parents a choice. So they all have a waiting list of some type. They have high retention rates. We just need more of them. And so there are actually this year started with 12 different proposals in the pipeline in Mississippi to open new charter schools. Our charter process has kind of different cut areas where they cut off those they don't think are ready. So I think we're down to 9 that are still in the pipeline this year. But that's tremendous.
That would double what we have now.
It would double. So I do not anticipate that all 9 will get approved. Last year there were 5 in the pipeline and 0 got approved. But my hope is that certainly a handful or more of these would get approved, which would just change the lives of a lot of kids who have a new place to go to school that's going to teach them how to read and write and get them prepared for life. So one of the things we're actually doing on this front is, real quickly, we launched a project in December called Embark, and it is all about coming alongside somebody who wants to start a charter or private school, and we want to help you do it. So if there's somebody in your audience who is out there thinking, I've been in education, I might like to run a school, or I think I could run it. We need a charter school in my community. We want to help you get that idea off the ground, up and running, get through the approval process, and get your doors open so you can help kids.
And they can just get a hold of you.
They can. EmpowerMS.org is our website. You can send us a message there. EmpowerMS.org.
Perez, somebody mentioned on the C Spire text line, is the third dark gray polo shirt in the studio so far this morning. If Secretary of State Michael Watson comes up next wearing a gray polo shirt, the conspiracy theories are confirmed. I don't know what the conspiracy is, that we all shop at the same place. I don't know.
I did it.
Yeah, it's Grant's fault. Most things are. That's the way it works, right? Thanks, Grant. Enjoyed it, man.